Hey there, Tony DeWitt here. I'm a retired Missouri attorney now living my best life on a beach in Florida. I offer content and commentary on current events in the law as well as some general legal topics, but I do not dispense legal advice by video. With that understanding out of the way, here's what we're discussing today. The Karen Reed case has stirred a lot of controversy, and I've received a number of emails and some comments about why didn't I look at that case. I initially avoided doing any commentary because it sort of came in between two other cases I was working on, and I got into it much too late to be of any value to offer any commentary that anybody would have thought helpful. I didn't see all the testimony and didn't really understand the theory of either the case of the prosecution or the theory of the defense. I mean, obviously, the theory of the defense is that she's not guilty, but why she's not guilty was not particularly clear to me. And of course, the defense doesn't have to prove she's not guilty, they just have to say that the state hasn't proved she is guilty. So there was this whole issue then at the end of the trial about the jury verdict and the fact that for the most part the jury may have reached a conclusion that she wasn't guilty, but they weren't allowed to finalize that as a partial verdict, and that's going to be a huge issue if there's ever an appeal in this case. But a subscriber named Paul writes that he would like some information about a particular theory that's been advanced on Reddit. So, as I understand it, here is that theory. This is from a Reddit post by David M. McIntyre, and he says he saw the Ring camera and looked at the video of Reed's damaged taillight and got the feeling the video had been altered. So then the stoplights come on and the red taillight appears to be lights on the same bulb. It's a really interesting analysis, and it basically focuses on whether Karen Reed's taillight was broken when there was the accident or supposedly she hit John, who is the man who died, or whether it may have been broken by the police afterwards and then reassembled. So he did a video that and also put out this PDF document on here that details why he thinks that the the video evidence was altered and the left side of the tail light is not possible. The illumination on the left side proves the tail light was not damaged at 5:08 a.m. and the undamaged parts of the tail light prove the tail light's damage could not have been caused by striking a person. And then some of the comments on Reddit are pretty interesting too. I read every single word of every single page. I remember seeing a still photo of Karen's car driving, and I thought to myself, something seems off. Now I get it. I assume that Karen's defense team has rounded up some engineers. I think that the original video in question needs to be forensically analyzed. Well, of course, that's exactly what you do. The corrupt Keystone Cops inverted video and conveniently lost video, so it's not a stretch that they tampered with video. And of course, these things all raise some form of reasonable doubt, so they're worth exploring. But that was not Paul's question. Paul's question was, how would this ever get admitted? Now, if he's talking about the PDF that was done by Mr. McIntyre there, I am not sure that could be admitted unless he had access to the evidence. Now, if he did produce a photograph of a reassembled essentially a reassembled taillight. The three pieces of the taillight were found by three different entities, a Trooper Proctor, a Mr. Buchanek there, and the CERT team. So all of them were apparently put back together. Now, the question arises as to whether or not whether Paul is asking whether if this is the original taillight, whether it could be admitted. Certainly it could be. Could this be admitted itself, this diagram or this picture? Probably not, because it contains hearsay. The depiction of Proctor and CERT and Buchanek here all point to essentially out-of-court statements that are asserted for the truth of the matter. So they fit the classic definition of hearsay. Now, all of that said, how could this information get into the actual case? That's a little bit different. And essentially, the defense has to adopt this theory, and they have to do the forensics necessary. They have to hire an engineer or a biomechanical expert or somebody like that to essentially prove the theory that these things, the injuries didn't happen because he was hit by a car, that the injuries are not consistent, whatever. You need a biomechanical expert to do that. But to get in the actual taillight pieces, you would need to have access to the original taillight pieces. And basically what happens there is your expert goes to the evidentiary locker where this is. There is a police officer and usually another expert, a state's expert, there with them. And he looks at all of these and he determines whether or not there is a reasonable basis to assert these things. And of course, an expert does not have to rely strictly on admissible evidence. So he can certainly adopt some of these theories because they would be the kind of thing that an expert might rely on if Mr. McIntyre has the qualifications to be able to offer that opinion. Now, that doesn't mean I'm suggesting they hire him as the expert, because clearly he has a bias in this case, and the people on Reddit do seem to have a belief that Karen Read is not guilty. There seem to be an awful lot of people who believe that she is guilty. So I know this has torn up a lot of the Boston area in terms of whether or not this this case was handled well, whether the detectives did what they were supposed to do, and all of that. These kind of things make it difficult for the state to prevail because clearly, if you have a large number of people who doubt the evidence and who doubt the veracity necessarily of the police officers, and if there's conflicting evidence that creates some of this doubt, well, you have a good shot at getting an acquittal in that situation. But how you get this evidence in is you hire an expert and you have them adopt this theory, and then you have them attempt to prove that theory in court. But you wait until after you file your motion for a directed verdict before you go there. Because the issue here is, does the state have enough evidence to convict? So you let them put on their case. At the end of that case, you make a motion for a directed verdict. If they don't, clearly, if they don't prevail, then there's no reason to put on your expert. The case is gone. On the other hand, if they do prevail and they get to a jury, then you're going to have to put on evidence to, dispute a lot of what the state relies upon. And keep in mind that the state comes back with a rebuttal expert if you do that. So whether or not that helps Karen Read at the end of the day is a little bit of a loaded question and difficult to answer. But I do believe there is a possibility to get this in if you use the original taillight pieces, and also if the original taillight pieces are all preserved and they all fit precisely together. If they don't fit precisely together, then you get the argument that the police did a shoddy job of collecting the evidence, and the evidence that they didn't collect may be more important than the evidence that they did collect. All of these things point to the fact that this is a very defensible case and that Karen Read has a good shot at being acquitted. It is a shame she has to go through this trial a second time, especially given what the jury did in the first case. So with that, I will leave it there. I do think that this will be something, when it does come up for retrial, I'm going to try to follow along and do videos on a daily basis. That's what I have for you today. Thanks for watching my video. If you have a request for me to cover a topic, please send me an email to the address above, and in the subject line put video request. If you have comments, drop them in the comments down below. If you found the content worthy, please consider subscribing. Since I started doing this work, I have always asked listeners to consider doing just one kind thing every day to make somebody else smile or make their life better in some way. Please consider doing that. It makes the world a better place. Now, YouTube has some suggestions for other videos of mine you may find interesting.